There are some moments that change everything. When the two disciples were walking on the road to Emmaus, they thought it was just another day. Well, they knew it was a bad day. After all, Jesus had just been crucified, and they were terrified. They didn't know that Jesus was walking beside them on the road. They didn't know how that one moment could change everything. There are those moments in our lives when everything changes. Perhaps we see Jesus, like the disciples did when he broke the bread. Perhaps we understand how God is working in our lives in a fuller way. Perhaps we get a glimpse of God's grace, of God's kingdom come, through an interaction with a stranger or an exchange with our best friend. We all know these experiences, and we know that God is in the middle of them. But what happens when you bring 31,000 Lutherans together from all over the country? What happens when you bring them to Houston, America's fourth largest city? What happens when they raise their hands in prayer together or give a hand in service to a city in need? Well, one thing happens. The same thing that happened for the disciples as they sat down to eat. This changes everything.
This changes everything. Everything. This changes everything. Everything. This changes everything. Everything. This changes everything. This changes everything, everything. This changes everything, everything. This changes everything, everything.
Going into this gathering, I was looking forward to all different ways that it would change me. This changes everything, but I didn't really understand until I started listening to the speakers, started worshiping, started hearing the music, how influential it would really be.
But people that I did meet from Ohio and Pennsylvania and Maryland and Alaska, Puerto Rico, it was a lot of fun, and it helped my connection a little bit more, seeing that there were other people my age who were still following this, and like it isn't disappearing, kind of.
As Kayla says, there's power in being together. Change happens when God's people are together. The two disciples in our story see their risen Lord as they gather together for a meal. We are changed by the sacrament of Holy Communion when we show up for a service. You can't just live stream the grace that God gives us through bread and wine. The most important time each day at the youth gathering is the nightly Mass gathering, when everyone comes together into a stadium to hear speakers, to pray, to sing, and to listen to music.
Wave, everybody!
I think, well, I've been to the youth gathering twice, and both those times, what astounds me always the most is always when we have the mass gathering, because it's
just being in the room with 30,000 other people that have similar beliefs and similar goals and ambitions. It's really inspiring.
Awesome. And is there a particular moment in the gathering that really sticks with you?
I guess when we all had our phones turn on with the flashlights to show that there's hope and that there's light at the end of the tunnel.
This gathering really changed my faith because I was able to see how many more people actually believed the same things I believed, and it really opened my eyes to like the rest of the world.
Part of coming together and being the church is sharing our stories. The disciples on the road to Emmaus shared their traumatic story of seeing their friend and teacher get executed in public. They shared their hope that he might be the one to redeem Israel. But this despair didn't have the final word. No, not at all. When Jesus revealed himself to them, showing them a glimpse of grace, well, then they see the hope that is lying beneath the surface in every story of despair. They see how God can change us and change everything. Our faith doesn't have to shy away from the big problems in life. In fact, at those moments, we need it more than ever. At the ELCA Youth Gathering, we heard stories of how God was present as people suffered from depression, self-harm, addiction, sexual assault, or revealing to the world who they really are.
Going to this youth gathering really changed my perspective and really increased my faith, because hearing all these speakers talk about what they've gone through and how God has always been there for them and how they've been so hopeful and how God has brought them hope, it's just really been such a booster for me, just thinking about how much God has helped them and how much God can help me in cases.
Yeah, the guy that was talking about the self-harm and the girl who was talking about being bullied when she was a kid, it's definitely something that happens a lot in high school, and so it's going to help me a lot to show my friends that you can push through it and that you can do it with God's help and with faith in God.
When I think his name was William Spark something, when he talked about how he had a lot of struggles and how he was going through depression, but he didn't know that was what it was at the time. So I feel like that was one of the big things, because I know there's a lot of people out there who have it and they don't really either fully understand or don't want to talk about it. And
Pastor Carla listened, and then she also said 4 words. There's grace for that. There's grace for that. Y'all, those words changed my life. After hearing those words, I started to share my story with others. I started doing research. I started giving talks. I learned how common self-harm is as a coping mechanism. How many people just like me had embraced a self-destructive behavior in the desperate hope of saving their lives.
I guess the guy with the drug addiction and his alcoholism is gonna stick with me because he.
This experience has really changed my faith by showing me that the speakers actually showed me that you can open up to anybody, and they changed me because they just opened up. They told us their stories and they had no fear going out there. And sometimes I get scared doing things, and they showed me that fear is not necessary.
And it's nice hearing personal stories of people, of how their experiences have changed them, which makes me think that I want to change as well, in a way.
Is there a particular experience that really sticks out for you?
I always like the music. The music is what kind of like speaks to me in like any service. I just feel like it flows better, and it just, the meaning behind it and the lyrics just hit me harder.
So awesome. And is there like a moment that's really going to stick with you?
I think last night when the 10th Avenue, that was like one of my favorite moments of the gathering part.
And
God doesn't change us just because. No, Jesus revealed himself to the disciples so that they might know the truth, that he had been raised from the dead, and act upon it. Jesus changed them, us, and the world so that we might show our faith to others in service, prayer, evangelism, and in love toward the other members of our Christian community. We did this constantly throughout our time at the youth gathering, and we are so proud to be able to share these stories of our faith in action with you.
Meaningful for you?
I really like the service day and seeing like how much all the staff at the school cared about the kids, even though they were like, they had their challenges and stuff, and all the teachers just really cared about all of them.
I think that experiencing going to help the elementary school that was in need of it really helped me get closer to God and at the same time closer to the children, and it really made me grow in faith while serving the Lord.
To start off, the whole gathering in itself was just an eye-opener, because seeing a grand scale of over 30,000 people, 30,000 Lutherans come together and spread God's grace is an immense thought and eventually reality that we experience, and I'm very thankful for that, because it's opened my eyes to how powerful God can influence the world and people around to help others. And
because I never, when I would think about being a Christian, I would think about going to church every Sunday, participating in my normal activities that I do there. I never would have thought that everything that was happening outside, I thought church was just church. I didn't realize that that my faith will continue outside of just the church.
That would be a cool shot.
It changed my faith because it gave me like new ideas about what our faith is about.
Music and overall connection with 31,000 other Lutherans just really made me believe that I have potential for a greater connection and relationship with God, and that I should maybe focus more on that instead of putting it aside. And this really kind of made me bounce back to wanting to go to church more and wanting to experience that kind of community, and I have now realized that the church is my safest environment and the place where I could be the most safe and comfortable.
And this has really inspired me to start looking inside myself and start thinking about God and how He's influenced my life. And pretty much this trip, I guess, has just made me think more about how God is such a big part of my life, and I didn't even realize it until now, I guess.
So how did participating in the gathering change your faith?
It brought me closer to God, and I'm more connected to God.
She asked us the question, what do you live for? And that really changed the way I think about things, because instead of thinking about what holds you back and what keeps you from trying new things, think about what do you live for, what is something that you're passionate about, and follow that thing and live for it, and make it your life. And that changed my faith dramatically.
What do you live for? This is an important question. After Jesus was made known to them in the breaking of the bread, the disciples knew that they lived for Christ and for God's kingdom. Everything else they had ever known was put into focus, and they understood how truly important it was to follow God. We had a similar experience of seeing Jesus in a moment while attending the ELCA Youth Gathering this summer. We saw Jesus in each other, in the music, in the speakers, in serving those in need, in worship, and in so many other ways. None of this would have been possible without the support of Holy Cross and its members, who contributed over $20,000 toward our trip. Due to your generosity, we now know Jesus better, and we know ourselves better. Thank you for helping us see that God has changed everything through Jesus, for our sake and for the sake of the world.